The air in my parents' dining room was thick with forced pleasantries. These mandatory family dinners were supposedly to welcome us both home on leave, but they were just another stage for their star performer. I sat there, a silent observer in my own life story, a role I had played for years. Tonight, I felt the familiar weight of that role settling over me again, the quiet resignation before the performance even began. My hands rested perfectly still on the table, a stark contrast to the lively, empty gestures of everyone else. My father, John, a man obsessed with appearances and loud success, held court at the head of the table. Across from me, my mother, Susan, a woman who mistakes her son's neediness for affection, watched with adoring eyes. And between them sat my brother, Leo, the family's charismatic but deeply insecure golden child, flashing his trademark smirk. For 20 minutes they turned Leo's routine training exercise into a heroic epic, polishing every minor detail until it shone brightly, casting the rest of us in its shadow. Then, the spotlight swiveled to me. My father's booming pride vanished, replaced by a gentle, pitying tone. "And you?" he asked, his voice trailing off as if he couldn't recall what I did. "How's your little thing going?" Before I could respond, Leo jumped in, laughing into his glass. He leaned forward with that familiar glint in his eye, the one that always came before a jab. "Didn't know you were still playing army, sis," he said, his voice slick with amusement. "Get a new badge?" Their shared laughter echoed in the silence of my mind. It wasn't just a joke, it was the summary of my entire existence in this family, a footnote, a hobby, something not to be taken seriously. The sound felt like a physical weight, the final straw on a lifetime of being overlooked. A familiar coldness settled deep in my stomach, the tired, heavy confirmation that nothing had changed. They would never see me. They were incapable of it, and that was it. The final cut. They thought it was just another joke at my expense, but I knew something they didn't. The punchline was about to walk through the door. Leo's words, "playing army," didn't just sting in the present moment, they echoed back through 2 decades of memories, each one a testament to the role I had been cast in. His comment was a key that unlocked a whole library of slights, a vast collection of moments where I was quietly overlooked while he was loudly celebrated. In my family's solar system, my brother Leo was the sun. He was the one who got the brand new car for his 16th birthday, the one whose college tuition was paid without a second thought, the one whose every whim was treated as a vital, urgent need. His light was so blinding that it was easy for my parents to forget anyone else was even in orbit. I wasn't a planet. I was just empty space. I remember with perfect clarity the end of his first semester of college. The phone calls home started as panicked whispers before becoming desperate, tearful confessions. He was failing, not just one class but nearly all of them. The golden child was tarnishing. My father, John, a man who believed success had to be loud to be real, immediately went into damage control. Expensive tutors were hired overnight, their fees paid from a fund I was always told was reserved for emergencies. My mother, Susan, who mistook her son's dependence for love, started driving 2 hours each way on weekends to hand-deliver his clean laundry and stock his mini-fridge, all while telling our relatives he was just adjusting but thriving. As I watched them pour thousands of dollars and endless emotional energy into salvaging Leo's future, my mind created its own internal ledger. I saw the $20 fee for the high school honors society that I had to pay myself because money was tight. I saw the busted laptop I desperately needed for my own coursework, a problem I had to solve by taking on extra shifts at my part-time job. Each check my father wrote for Leo's tutors felt like a personal rejection, a clear statement of my value. Leo's crisis was a 5-alarm fire demanding every resource, while my needs were quiet, smoldering embers they were happy to let burn out on their own. They were the architects of our roles after all. My father couldn't comprehend a victory unless it came with a trophy and applause. My quiet, steady progress was invisible to him. My mother, so terrified of her son ever feeling the cold sting of failure, wrapped him in a cocoon of excuses and support, ensuring he would never have to stand on his own. They saw his constant need for bailouts not as a weakness, but as a sign of his great potential that required their constant investment. My independence wasn't a strength to them, it was a convenience. It was their permission slip to focus all their attention elsewhere. to pour every drop of water on the plant they were sure would grow tallest, leaving mine to wither in the shade. That narrative became painfully clear when I decided I wanted to join the military. I had the grades, the discipline, and a clear vision for my future through ROTC. All I needed was some help with the initial fees and supplies for a program that would, ironically, pay for my entire education. I sat them down at the same dining room table and laid out my plan, my voice filled with a hope I hadn't felt in years. My father listened, nodding slowly, before delivering the familiar line. "Money is just too tight right now," he said, not unkindly. "But you're so responsible, you're the strong one, we know you'll figure it out." I was on my own. So, I did figure it out. I spent that summer working 2 jobs, saving every single dollar. I filled out dozens of scholarship applications by hand at the public library because we couldn't afford internet at home that year, the same year they paid to fix the suspension on Leo's car after he'd tried to take it off-roading. Every burger I flipped, every floor I mopped, was a quiet act of defiance. My parents saw my hard work and praised my resilience, completely oblivious to the fact that they were the very reason it was necessary. They had created the obstacle course and then applauded me for learning how to run it. That was their core belief, the false narrative that kept their world spinning. Leo needed them. He was the sensitive one, the one with boundless potential who just required a little, or a lot, of help to get by. I, on the other hand, was the capable one, the independent one, the one who didn't seem to need anything. My self-reliance was never nurtured as a virtue, it was treated as a pre-existing condition, an innate trait that absolved them of all parental obligation. My independence wasn't a source of pride for them, it was a resource they could exploit to pour everything they had left into my brother. It was the foundation of my invisibility. They had spent my entire life writing my story for me. Sitting at that dinner table, watching them laugh, I decided it was time to hand them the final chapter, written in my own words. As I sat there, marinating in their casual cruelty, something inside me shifted. The familiar crushing hurt didn't vanish, but it crystallized. It transformed from a heavy liquid grief into something hard, clear and sharp, a diamond of pure resolve. For the first time, my goal wasn't to win their love, or even to earn their respect. I knew with absolute certainty that both were impossible. The goal was simply revelation. I wasn't seeking revenge, not in the way they would understand it. I was going to force them to see the truth, a truth they had spent my entire life deliberately ignoring. This wasn't some grand, premeditated scheme I had been plotting for years. The opportunity was born of simple, professional convenience. It was a coincidence that felt like fate. I had a legitimate and time-sensitive duty to perform. I needed to hand off a file of sensitive strategic documents to one of my officers, who, as it happened, was on leave in the same region. This simple obligation suddenly presented a dual purpose, a way to satisfy my professional responsibility and my personal need for clarity, a way to bring my 2 worlds, the one where I was invisible and the one where I was in command, crashing together. The officer in question was a woman I respected immensely. Her name was Captain Eva Rostova, a sharp, incredibly competent leader, known for her no-nonsense attitude and unwavering professionalism. I also knew a key fact about her, a detail that made her the perfect unwitting instrument for my plan. She was my brother Leo's commanding officer. A week prior, I had sent her a simple, encrypted text arranging the handoff. I suggested a neutral location for the exchange, framing my parents' address as nothing more than a convenient meeting point. 1900 hours, my place. "It'll be quiet," the message had said. She agreed without question. The genius of the plan was its simplicity. I didn't need to gather receipts from the past. I didn't need to print out bank statements or dig up old angry emails. My entire career was the receipt. My rank, my responsibilities, the very authority I held over the man they considered a hero, that was the evidence. My life, lived far away from their judgment and their false narratives, was the truth they had never bothered to learn. They had made fun of me for playing army, and I was about to let the game walk right through their front door and salute me. I took a slow sip of water, looked at their laughing faces, and checked the time on my watch. The truth was 5 minutes away. I let the silence hang in the air after Leo's joke, letting it stretch until it became uncomfortable. The echoes of their laughter died, replaced by the sound of silverware on porcelain, and the growing awkwardness of my refusal to respond. I just looked at them, my expression unreadable, and watched as their smiles faltered one by one. They were waiting for me to laugh it off, to play my part as the good-natured butt of the joke, but I offered them nothing. My quiet was a question they didn't know how to answer, and the tension in the room began to coil like a spring. Then the doorbell rang, a sharp, precise chime that cut through the heavy silence. My mother sighed with theatrical annoyance, grateful for the interruption. "Who on earth could that be at this hour?" she muttered. My father, ever the patriarch, gestured to my brother. "Son, see who's at the door," he commanded, already dismissing the visitor as an inconvenience. Leo started to push his chair back, a relieved smirk returning to his face, eager to escape the suffocating quiet I had created. He probably assumed it was one of his friends. "Don't worry," I said, my voice cutting through their assumptions. It was calm, steady, and held a note of finality that made them all pause. I placed my napkin on the table and stood up. "I'll get it. It's for me." I didn't look at them as I walked out of the dining room, but I could feel their confused stares on my back. The short walk to the front door felt like the longest of my life, a slow march toward a point of no return. I took one final, steadying breath and opened the door. There stood Captain Eva Rostova, her service uniform immaculate under the porch light, her posture a ruler straight line of pure professionalism. She was an image of order and discipline, a stark contrast to the messy, emotional chaos of the house she was about to enter. The moment she stepped over the threshold, the entire atmosphere of the home shifted. It was as if the air itself snapped to attention. Leo, who had followed me out of curiosity, stopped dead in the hallway. The color drained from his face as he saw his own commanding officer. "Captain Rostova?" he stammered, his voice cracking. What are you doing here?" My father, hearing the title captain, puffed out his chest and strode into the foyer, his hand extended. He saw her uniform and immediately assumed she was there for his golden boy, another testament to Leo's importance. "Captain," he boomed, trying to take control of the situation. "John, Leo's father. A pleasure to meet you. Any friend of Leo's is a friend of ours." His voice trailed off as he realized his hand was just hanging in the air, completely ignored. Captain Rostova's eyes cut past my father and my brother, as if they were nothing more than furniture. Her gaze was a laser, locking directly onto me with unwavering focus. She didn't offer a smile or a handshake. Instead, in the stunned silence of my family's foyer, she snapped her heels together, her body rigid, her hand flying up in a salute so crisp it seemed to slice the air. Her voice was a thunderclap, formal and absolute, destroying every lie my family had ever built. "Major General, welcome home, ma'am. I have the files you requested." Time seemed to stop. The two words, Major General, hung in the air, shattering the world my family knew. Leo physically recoiled as if he'd been struck, his jaw unhinged, his arrogant smirk replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. I could see the frantic calculations behind his eyes as he processed the impossible. His little sister, the one playing army, not only outranked him, but vastly outranked his own commanding officer. He looked like a child who had just discovered his parents were aliens. My father froze completely, his hand still awkwardly extended in his rejected handshake. The words came out of his mouth in a choked, disbelieving whisper. "Major General?" He looked from Captain Rostova's unwavering salute to me, and for the very first time in my life, I saw him truly see me. In his eyes I saw 3 decades of ignored report cards, forgotten achievements, and casual dismissals all crashing down upon him at once. He wasn't just looking at his daughter, he was looking at a stranger. A powerful figure he had failed to recognize while she lived under his own roof. He had lost his words because his words had never meant anything. My mother simply stood in the doorway to the dining room, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a horrified disbelief. Her entire narrative, the carefully constructed story of the needy son who required all her support and the self-sufficient daughter who needed nothing, had just been obliterated by a single perfectly executed salute. The foundation of her world had crumbled to dust in a matter of seconds. While their universe imploded, I simply stood there, a calm island in their sea of chaos. With a precision born of years of training, I returned the captain's salute. "At ease, Captain," I said, my voice even and professional. "Thank you for being prompt. Please, come in." I treated it as the most normal transaction in the world, my calm demeanor serving only to amplify their stunned, ringing silence. And in the ringing silence that followed, I didn't feel anger or victory. I just felt quiet. For the first time, I was the one who got to walk away. I concluded my business with Captain Rostova at the door, handing back the now empty file with a quiet word of thanks. When I turned back around, the scene in the foyer was a frozen tableau of shock. 3 faces, 3 different masks of disbelief, all staring at me as if I had just peeled off my skin and revealed someone else entirely. The air was thick with questions they didn't know how to ask and accusations they were just beginning to form. In the past, I would have stayed. I would have waded into their emotional chaos, trying to manage their feelings, trying to explain myself, trying to absorb their anger and confusion. But that version of me was gone. Without a single word, I walked past them, picked up my jacket from the back of a dining chair, and headed back toward the door. I didn't offer an explanation. I didn't stay for the inevitable fallout. My father finally found his voice, a sputtering, indignant sound. "Where are you going? We need to talk about this. You can't just..." His voice was drowned out by the quiet click of the front door closing behind me. I walked out into the cool night air, leaving them behind in the ruins of their own making. I didn't run. I just walked away, feeling a profound, deafening quiet settle over me. For the first time, the silence didn't feel like neglect, it felt like peace. Of course, the silence didn't last. My phone started lighting up before I even reached my car. The digital barrage was as predictable as it was pathetic. First came the text from my father, a series of demanding all-caps messages. "Why didn't you tell us? What was the meaning of that display? You have a responsibility to this family." He saw my rank not as my achievement, but as a secret I had selfishly kept from him. Then came my mother's texts, dripping with manipulative guilt. "You completely humiliated your brother. He's devastated. I hope you're happy." She, as always, was concerned only with managing Leo's feelings, casting me as the villain for daring to exist outside the role she'd written for me. And then there was Leo's, a single solitary word that seemed to hold all the weight of his shattered worldview. How? I looked at the 3 message threads, 3 perfect summaries of the people who had defined my life for so long. There was no apology, no curiosity, no pride. There was only entitlement, blame, and confusion. I thought about typing a response, about trying to explain everything, about defending myself one last time. But what was the point? They weren't asking to understand, they were asking to regain control. So, with a calm that felt utterly foreign and wonderfully liberating, I opened each contact and pressed the block button. One by one their voices went silent, this time by my choice. A year has passed since that dinner. The silence that I chose for myself that night has blossomed into a life I never could have imagined while living in their shadow. My world is no longer confined to their small, judgmental stage. Now, it is a vast briefing room, the air humming with quiet professionalism. I stand before a digital map of the world, pointing out strategic imperatives to colonels and fellow generals, men and women who see me for my expertise, not my gender or my place in a family hierarchy. The respect I command here isn't given begrudgingly, it is earned through merit, through competence, and through the quiet authority that comes from knowing exactly who you are. My life is defined by a peaceful, disciplined rhythm. It's in the quiet satisfaction of a pre-dawn run, as the sun rises over the base. It's in the weight of real responsibility, mentoring young officers and shaping strategy that has tangible consequences. It's in the simple pleasure of my own apartment, a space that is entirely mine, filled with books they'd never read and pictures from a life they never knew I was living. This is the world I built for myself, brick by brick, while they were busy polishing the unearned trophies of their golden child. It's a world where I am not just visible, I am valued. I hear things about them sometimes, through the occasional email from a well-meaning aunt. The updates paint a sad, predictable picture. Leo is still in the service, but I'm told his swagger is gone, replaced by a sullen, uncertain energy. It's hard to be the charismatic star of the show when you know your invisible little sister is one of the people writing the script. My parents, in a final, ironic twist, now try to name-drop me. They talk about our daughter, the Major General, to anyone who will listen. But the stories ring hollow, because the anecdotes stop a year ago. Their power was always in their ability to define me. Now that they can't, their words are just empty noise. I used to think that leaving them would be a violent, angry act, like burning a bridge to the ground. But I realize now, that was never the right metaphor. I wasn't the one holding the match. In truth, the bridge was always on fire, and I was the only one standing on it, desperately trying to hold the crumbling pieces together. Letting go wasn't an act of destruction. It was an act of self-preservation. I didn't burn the bridge. I just finally gave myself permission to walk away from the flames. I learned that sometimes, the only way to find your place in the world is to leave the one you were assigned. The greatest rank I ever achieved was leaving their army behind. If you've ever had to become your own hero, leave a comment below. I see you.